Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. Some weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I watched a video from Brian at the BookTube channel, Bookish, in which he said he was going to be checking out from the library several books by the writer Edmund White, who had recently passed, sort of just to make sure that this type of literature remained in circulation. And I decided I would do the same thing. And I had no fear of this literature falling out of circulation when it comes to the Chicago Public Library, because what our system holds, just about every book had a queue waiting to be checked out of not merely one or two people, but multiple people. But nevertheless, I followed his example and put my name on the list for several items. And the first one that came was City Boy. And I was interested to start reading. There's a nice introduction by John Irving, who I believe is a writer of some sort. I think I may have read. I don't know why I always confuse those words. Something by him. Let me just read this. Edmund White, a master of the erotic confession, is our most accomplished triathlete of prose, a novelist, biographer, and memoirist. Truly, no other American writer of my generation manages to be all three with such personal passion and veracity. The fiercely defiant A Boy's Own Story remains the coming-of-age novel that has the deepest resonance for me, notwithstanding that it's about a gay boy coming of age, and I'm straight. No one who honestly remembers being a sensitive young man can fail to identify with the universal longing or the frustration and the anger underlying this semi-autobiographical novel. And White's recent biography of the mercurial and much misunderstood Rimbaud is fittingly devastating and succinct. Fittingly, because the outcast poet's life was tragic and brief. Now comes a bold, penetrating companion to White's My Lives, an earlier bittersweet memoir. In City Boy, the memoirist examines his life in New York in the 1960s and 70s. Not only were these vital years for White's own gay liberation, but City Boy is also the story of White's literary emergence, his struggles and ambitions as a writer. There is the bracing sexual candor and explicitness White is justly famous for. As he says, what we desire is crucial to who we are. But what is most unforgettable are the piercing self-portraits of the young writer who describes himself as desperate for recognition, and the overwhelming panoply of older, often legendary writers White meets along the way. I longed for literary celebrity, even as I saw with my own eyes how little happiness it brought. This splendid book is at once fascinating social history and sublimely detailed gossip. Young gay readers who don't know what it was like to be gay in New York in the 60s and 70s should devour it. Those straight readers who are somehow still unfriendly to homosexuality must open their eyes and read every word of City Boy, too. As for those of us, gay and straight, who have long admired Edmund White, this memoir is a wise and humane treatise on the delicate differences between love and friendship. Indeed, between lovers and friends. Most deservedly, White has had his share of both, and he writes about them with an irreproachable kindness and affection. So this one came in some weeks ago, and I thought, oh, it sounds pretty interesting, and I opened it up and read a little of it. So here, and was not particularly interested. In fact, maybe was somewhat turned off. In the 1970s in New York, everyone slept till noon. It was a grungy, dangerous, bankrupt city without normal services most of the time. The garbage piled up and stank during long strikes of the sanitation workers. A major blackout led to days and days of looting. We gay guys wore whistles around our necks so we could summon help from other gay men when we were attacked on the streets by gangs living in the projects between Greenwich Village and the West Side leather bars. And so on. I don't know, it just didn't strike me as that interesting, and so I put it aside. I guess possibly because sometimes I don't find the grunge of New York City all that appealing. And there I thought that I would let the matter rest. But then a whole bunch of books came in at the library, including one by Edmund White, and it happens to be A Boy's Own Story, which is the book that John Irving talked about. So it is a novel, but it is fictionalized autobiography. And I started to read it. I'm not reading now. I've cast reading aside, and I'm just indulging in my deliberate habitude, or I don't know, ennui, would that be a word? The first quoting T.S. Eliot, and just being kind of lost at sea amidst the cascading news items that buffet from all sides, given the political situation in the United States these days. But I picked it up and found myself quite charmed with the writing. And it's an interesting thing because I have been a writer for a long time. And it's something I think that only perhaps happens to a person who is a writer. And it does not happen as often as you might wish that it would. And that is that I read his prose and I just found myself continually thinking, this is beautiful. Not so much this is beautiful, but more this is exquisite. How he said this, how this turn of phrase captured the essence of something. And just I welled with admiration at how he managed to say things that never in a million years could I have said that way or have dreamt of saying that way. It's one of the pleasures, I think, with becoming a writer oneself, is that it then gives you sort of a honed appreciation for what other people do. I suppose it would be the same as if one were a dancer and then one saw another dancer that did something amazing. The dancer might have an appreciation for it that was just slightly different than the layperson's appreciation. And I mean, I'm not trying to say that I see something special here or anything, but just to share the enjoyment. And I may actually keep on reading this. You see, I always get those words confused. Let's see if I can read see how far I can go just from the beginning. We're going for a midnight boat ride. It's a cold, clear summer night, and four of us, the two boys, my dad and I, are descending the stairs that zigzag down the hill from the house to the dock. Old Boy, my dad's dog, knows where we're headed. He rushes down the slope beside us, looks back, snorts, and tears up a bit of grass as he twirls in a circle. "What is it, old boy? What is it?" my father says, smiling faintly, delighted to be providing excitement for the dog, whom he always called his best friend. I was bundled up, a sweater and a windbreaker over today's sunburn. My father stopped to examine the bottom two steps just above the footpath that traveled from cottage to cottage on our side of the lake. This afternoon, he had put in the new steps, fresh boards placed vertically to retain the sand and dirt, each braced by 4 wooden stakes pounded into the ground. Soon the steps would sag and sprawl and need to be redone. Whenever I came back from a swim or a trip in the outboard down to the village grocery store, I passed him crouched over his eternal steps, or saw him up on a ladder painting the house, or heard his power saw arguing with itself in the garage still higher up the hill on the road. My father regarded guests as nuisances who had to be entertained over and over again. Tonight's expedition was just such a duty. But the boys, our guests' sons, didn't register the cheerlessness of the occasion and thought it was exciting still to be up at such an hour. They had run on down to the water as I lingered obediently beside my father, who caressed the steps with the flashlight. The boys were racing to the end of the dock, feet pounding the boards. Old Boy started out after them, but then came back to round us up. Now Kevin was threatening to push his little brother in. Squeals, breathing, a tussle, then release, followed by the sound of two boys just being. As Dad and I went on down, his flashlight veered off into the water, scaring a school of minnows and illuminating bands of sand. The Chris craft, moored to the short end of the L formed by the dock, was big, heavy, imposing. 2 tarpaulins covered it. One was a square, corners rounded, that fitted over the 2 seats in front. The other was a smaller, perfect rectangle that protected the bucket seat aft of the engine, which itself lay concealed, redolent of gasoline, under the double wood doors trimmed in chrome. The canvas, as I undid the grommets and gathered in its folds, had the familiar smell of a sour washcloth. Neither my father nor I moved very gracefully over that boat. We were both afraid of the water. He because he couldn't swim, I because I was afraid of everything. Dad's most constant attribute was the cigar clenched between his small, stained teeth, since he could usually be found in an air-conditioned house or office or car, the system under his control. He saw to it that the smoke and smell filtered evenly and thickly into every corner of his world, subduing those around him. Perhaps, like a skunk parent, he was steeping us in his protective stink. It goes on delightfully like that, and I could very easily read to you this whole boat outing excursion, but I would say if you enjoyed that, this cover doesn't really do the book justice. You might consider seeking it out yourself, A Boy's Own Story. Just so much of the details there appealed to me. The saw arguing with itself. What a marvelous use of I guess a verb there. I don't know if arguing is a verb. Is that something else at gerunders? I don't know. But just and he does this kind of thing over and over again. Caressed the steps with the flashlight. Just marvelous. The language under his it's like when a tailor does things with a fabric that one would think the fabric is not capable of doing. This is just how I feel with this delectable prose. And then, what he's describing as well, this sort of almost love letter to his vanished father. I mean, the life he describes is nothing at all similar to anything in my world when I was a boy, and I would have come up slightly after him. I don't know what year he was born. I must be, 20 years behind him, something like that, at least 10. My family was different. We did not exist anywhere around water. And even just those aspects call up memories from other books that I've read. So I think back to the scene in Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms on the water, one of my favorite scenes when they're taking the boat to leave the country, I believe. But it also calls up the description of the steps down. That description towards the end of the 39 steps, how the steps go down and there's some action. And just I find that his clarity can stand with any of that. And yet, much as his father's cigar smoke, it is just pungent with this feeling, this warmth of childhood. And so I find myself constantly reflecting back to my own childhood, even though, as I say, there is nothing in his family remotely similar to the family I grew up in. So just a pleasant experience from this book, and I thought I would share a little bit of it with you. And if we are lucky, I will continue reading this, even though I am not reading anything. Thank you for stopping by my channel.